Shabbat Shalom. How are you? Okay.
Where would you like this?
It can hang out underneath the reader's desk, I think. Thank you.
You need any help?
I don't think so. We have 3 scrolls this Shabbat, and not 2. Because Rosh Chodesh. This is a really good workout, too.
Yes, it is.
Oh, there we go. We just got our stream just started.
You know, it just occurred to me, you know, our weekly updates email is now out of sync. Out of sync in that
I don't
the last
think-
one went from the 23rd or 4th to the 1st,
Yes.
and that's been happening with increasing frequency where we're off first by a day, now 2 days, now 3 days.
Okay.
So we have a weekly email and the last one ended on December the 1st.
Right.
And here it is the 3rd.
Yes.
And it's going to miss the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th, the 6th. It won't come out until Sunday or Monday.
It should come out Saturday night, hopefully, this time, because there's some
And I did
Sunday
notice
events.
that what could have been a link to our YouTube live streaming doesn't appear on our show cloud calendar.
I think it
So
should only be in the
this is one of
it's
these
in the emails.
weekends
Yeah.
where there's no weekly update. This arose only because Edie was fairly certain she wasn't going to make it for Saturday morning.
Uh-huh.
And she sent an email out to Maria to have a chaperone. And sure enough, there's no weekly update that's come out yet.
Yep.
And the calendar doesn't have a link.
Yeah, there should have been one.
to-
There should have been one on Sunday, and I'll check into what happened there.
You know, it's gotten, it used to, the weekly updates used to come out on Saturday, you know, they covered Sunday through Saturday.
Right.
They're out of sync.
Well, they're supposed to go 10 days, I think, but the
Yeah.
problem was the last one did, but it came out too long ago. That's the problem.
Right.
Is there should have been one on, there should have been one on Sunday.
Another one should have come out and it didn't,
Yeah.
so we've got a gap right now.
Yep.
But are Edie and I the only ones who noticed that?
I'm not sure. Probably not. I noticed it today when I was typing
The show cloud calendar, what we may want to do is just put in there are no links
Yeah, there we
on
go.
the show
So-
cloud calendar. If you go to our
Yeah.
website,
Well, that's because somebody put it in as, rather than being events, they put things in as scheduling rules, which was an easy way to do it, but it doesn't let you put the text in that you need.
yeah, we need
So they need to be events. They need to be recurring events. So the goal, well, it had been for a while. I think we finally got the go-ahead on it. Is we're going to pick up this the events calendar, which is a tool that WordPress uses, and enables us to export and import events easily. It won't play well with ShowCloud, but that doesn't matter. We just use it as our master calendar, and we use ShowCloud for registration only. Takes care of.
But how do people know to go to is there a separate link that takes you to the calendar?
Calendar will be on just integrated right into the website.
Perfect.
So yeah, instead of sending people right now, it's sending them to the ShowCloud calendar.
Now,
It won't do
It
that.
won't do that anymore.
Yeah.
Even better. And let ShowCloud fix its
Yeah.
technology.
It'll send them straight
You
to
would think
the
that by now, enough people use it.
Halevi. Yeah, there we go.
That ShowCloud will fix this.
There are some serious gaps in the product, and that's one of them.
We got the quarterly.
It showed up.
brochure. We got it today. It's
Thank you.
gorgeous.
Well, thank
Just
you.
gorgeous.
I'll pass it along.
It is so nice. It is unlike anything we've seen before.
Good.
It's really
Well, I'm glad you liked
so
it.
much better. So packed with
Must
content.
Let's hope must say. Okay. So that means Pinchas is right back here. We'll be close enough in the morning. Yeah, there it is. All right. Thanks. Well, I'm glad you liked it. We were frustrated because I don't know if you saw the note in the
Yes.
monthly, but there was a miscommunication with the printer, and it did not.
Oh, we just got I forget from what organization, the ABA.
Mm-hmm.
Its monthly magazine couldn't be printed. No paper stock.
Oh.
Their choice was print on what you usually do, which is the same glossy paper you use, but you have to wait 6 weeks, or go to a lower quality stock. And they said, no, we'll wait. They
Well, I
just
will
had
tell
to send
you,
out an email to everybody.
despite the miscommunication, we are really happy with this printer. Otherwise, they give us a very good rate, and they've been letting us use their mass mail certificate. So
Now, what three are we going to use tomorrow, and which are they?
this one, this one, this one. This is number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3.
Got it.
I'm okay.
No, I just sliced open the other
Hey.
one. That's what I did today.
Oh, yeah.
Slicing them all.
Ouch.
Still rats.
Oh, I'm sorry. Schleima.
It happens.
Everybody's standing in the lobby talking.
Yeah, there is. Shabbat Shalom. Wait, somebody else wasn't tapped for tonight, were they? You didn't tap someone else for tonight, did you? No. Okay. Okay. Okay, no worries. You know what? I shouldn't say no worries. I should say thank you. I appreciate it. There we go. Shabbat Shalom. We do need some more people inside. I don't know if they can hear me on the. I'm not sure if it's out in the lobby or not. I don't think it is actually, but that's okay. They'll come in eventually. We'll create such an atmosphere of warmth and Shabbat feeling that they'll have, they'll just be drawn in. They'll feel compelled. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom. We'll get started on page 10. We'll begin with the Kabbalat Shabbat service. We'll begin with our Yedid Nefesh on page 10. And good to see so many folks here tonight. Hey. Yedid Nefesh Av Harachaman Mishoch Avdach Eretzonach Yarutz Avdach Kemo Ayal Yishtachaveh Mul Hadarach Ki Yerav Lo Yedidutach Minofet Suf Vechol Tam Hadunah Ziv Haolam Nafshi Cholat Avatach Ana Ilna Refana Lach Beharod Lach Noam Zivach Asit Chazek V'titrapei V'hayetalach Shivchat Olam V'atik Yehemu Rachamecha V'chusna Abein Ohavach Ki Ze Kama Nichsaf Lirot B'tiferet Uzach Ana Eli Machmad Libi Chushana Ve'al Tit'alam Higalena Ufros Chaviv Alai Et Sukkah Shelomach Ta'ir eret mikvodach, Nagila v'nismecha bach, Maher ahuv kiva moed, V'choneini ki me'olam, Page 11. Lechu neranena l'Adonai nariya letzur yisheinu nekadma fanav betoda bizmirot nariya lo. Arbaim shana akut bedor, va'omaram to'e levav heim, v'hem lo yadu derachai, asher nishbati ve'apim yivun el menuchati. We'll read silently pages 13 and 14. Shiru l'Adonai shir chadash, shiru l'Adonai kol ha'aretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, Yismechu hashamayim, V'tagel haaretz. Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Umelo'o, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Yiram hayam, Umelo'o. Yalo sarai b'chol Yival yishpot ha'aretz, yishpot hevel b'tzedek ve'amim be'emunato. Pages 15 and 16 we'll read responsively this psalm, to be led by Popcorn. Matt.
Adonai reigns, let the earth be glad, let the many distant lands rejoice.
Clouds and thick darkness surround the divine. Righteousness and justice secure God's throne. Fire goes before God, consuming besiegers round about.
Flashes of lightning illumine the land. The earth watches and trembles. Mountains melt like wax at the approach of Adonai, at the approach of the master of all the earth.
The heavens tell of God's righteousness, and all the nations see God's glory.
Worshippers of idols be shamed for praising false gods. All that is deemed supreme bow before God.
Zion hears of it and rejoices. The cities of Judah exult as you, Adonai, pass judgment.
You, Adonai, are above all that is earthly, exalted over all that is worshipped as divine.
Those who love Adonai hate evil. God protects the lives of the faithful, saving them from the hands of the sinful.
Light is sown for the righteous and joy for the upright. Rejoice in Adonai, you righteous people, and thank God as you pronounce his divine holy name.
Page 17. Mizmor shiru l'Adonai shir chadash ki niflaot asa hoshia lo yemino uzroa kodsho yai hodia Adonai Yeshuato leinei hagoyim gila tzidkato zachar chasto ve'emunato לבית ישראל ראו כל אפסי הארץ את ישועת אלוהינו הריעו לאדוני כל הארץ פיתחו ורננו וזמרו זמרו לאדוני בכינור וכל זמרה בחצות רוט בקול שופר הריעו לפני המלך אדוני ירם הים ומלואו תבל ויושבי בה נהרות ימחאו כף יחד הרים ירננו לפני אדוני קיבה לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצדק ועמים במישרים ידי Page 19 and 20 we'll read silently. Adonai malach yagazu amim yoshev kruvim tanut haaretz. Adonai v'ziyam. Moshe v'Aaron. Romemu Adonai Eloheinu v'ishtachavu l'har kodsho ki kadosh Adonai Eloheinu. Page 21. Mizmor leDavid, havu l'Adonai b'nei Elim, havu l'Adonai kavod va'oz, havu l'Adonai kevod shemo, ishtachavu l'Adonai behadrat kodesh. Kol Adonai al hamayim el hakavod hirim Adonai al mayim rabim Kol Adonai ba'koach Kol Adonai behadar Kol Adonai shover arazim Vayishaber Adonai et harzei halvanon Vayarkidem kemo egel Levanon Vesiryon kemo ven re'emim Kol Adonai chotzev lahavot eish Kol Adonai yachil Adonai midbar kadesh Kol Adonai yacholel ayalot Vayechesof ye'arot Uvehechalo kulo omer kavod Kulo omer kavod Adonai lamavul yashav Vayeshev Adonai melech leolam Adonai oz le'amo yiten Adonai yevarech et amo vashalom. Page 23. Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Shamor vezachor B'dibur echad ishmianu El hamiyuchad Adonai echad U'shemo echad L'shem l'tiferet V'lithilah Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Likrat Shabbat Lechu v'nei lecha ki makor Haberacha merosh mikedem Nesu chasof maaseh B'machshavat chila Lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela Mikdash melech ir melucha kumitz'i mitoch ha'afecha rav lach shevet ve'emek habacha v'hu yachamol alayich chemla lecha dodi likrat kala Pnei Shabbat nekabela התנערי מעפר קומי לבשי בגדי תפארתך על יד בן ישי בית הלחמי קרבה אל נפשי גאלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה התעוררי כי לאורך קומי אורי שיר דברי כבוד אדוני עלייך נגלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה לא תבושי ולא תקלמי מה תשתוכחי ומה תמי בך יחסו אני עמי ונבנתה עירלתי לה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה והיו למשיסה שוסייך ורחקו כל מבלייך יסיס עלייך אלוהיך כמסוס חתן על כלה לך דודי לקראת כלה פני שבת נקבלה ימין ושמאל תפרוצי ואת אדוני תעריצי על יד איש בן פרצי ונשמחה ונגילה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה בואי לשלום עטרת בעלה גם בשמחה ובתולה תוך אמוני עם סגולה בואי חלה לך דודי לקראת קלה פני שבת נקבלה. We're seated on page 27. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני ולזמר לשמך היום. כי הנה... צדיק כתמר יפרח כארז בלבנון יזכה שתולים בבית אדוני בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו עוד ינובון בשיבה דשנים ורעננים יהיו להגיד כי ישר אדוני צורי ולא עוולה תבוא אדוני מלאך יגע לבש מקולות מים רבים, אדירים משברי ים, אדיר במרום אדוני, עדותיך נאמנו מאוד, לביתך נאווה קודש, אדוני לאורך ימים. We'll rise on page 30 for those who are reciting Kaddish, or if it's your custom to rise for Kaddish Shatom, page 30. יתגדל ויתקדש שמך רבה. ועלמה דברה קירותך וימליך מלכותך בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמך רבה מברך לעולם ולעולמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמך לקודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן. Yahei Shalom Rabba Mishmaya V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Asay Shalom B'mromav Hu Ya'asay Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'imru Amen. Shabbat Shalom, and we will. I welcome you all. If those, let's see. I did have a short list of folks who are celebrating anniversaries this month, and none of them are in the room, so that's okay. We still wish them a happy anniversary. We will turn to page 39, and we'll rise as we begin our Mariv service together for Shabbat with Baruch Hu. Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. We're seated and we continue individually. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bidvaro ma'ariv v'aravim. ומעביר יום ומעביר לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים. Let's read this one in English on page 40, our second bracha before Shema. Ahavat Olam will read in English. I'll do the Chatima in Hebrew though. With timeless love you have loved your people, the house of Israel. You have taught us Torah and mitzvot, statutes and laws. Therefore, Adonai, our God, as we lie down and as we rise up, we shall speak of your laws, rejoicing in the words of your Torah and in your mitzvot forever and ever. For they are our life and the fullness of our days, and on them we shall meditate day and night. ואהבתך תסיר ממנו לעולמים, ברוך אתה אדוני, אוהב עמו ישראל. שמע ישראל, אדוני אלוהינו, אדוני אחד. ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך, בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, והיה עם שמות. Bye. Adonai Elohechem emet ve'emunah kol zot v'kayam aleinu ki hu Adonai Eloheinu v'nachim. ומלכותו ברצון קיבלו עליהם משה ומרים ובני ישראל, לך אנו שירה בשמחה רבה, ואמרו כולם מי כמוך באלים אדוני מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות אוסף אלה. ידי די די ידי די ידי די 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 ידי די די ידי די די ידי די מלכותך ראו בניך בוקי הים לפני משה זה אלי אנו ואמרו אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד ידי די די ידי די די ידי די די ידי די ונאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל. השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום ועמידנו מלכנו לחיים ופסולים. ושמור את צאתנו ובואנו לחיים ולשלום מעתה ועד עולם ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני הפורש סוכת שלום עלינו ועל כל עמו ישראל ועל ירושלים. We rise on page 46. ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ וביום השביעי שבת וינפש. יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה בעלמא דברה קירותי והמליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון ובחיי לכל בית ישראל בגלה בגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם לעלמי עלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי קודשה בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמא ואמרו amen. Silent Amidah begins on page 47. Don't forget the insertion for Hanukkah, which is found in the 400s. Baruch. Rosh HaChodesh We rise on page 53 for the symbolic repetition of the Amidah. ויחולו השמיים והארץ וכל צבאם ויחל אלוהים ביום השביעי מלאכתו אשר עשה וישפוט ביום השביעי מכל מלאכתו אשר עשה ויברך אלוהים את יום השביעי ויקדש אותו כי בו שבת מכל מלאכתו אשר ברא אלוהים לעשות. Baruch ata Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol HaGibor ve'Hanora El Elyon, Konei Shamayim va'aretz. Magen Avot bidbaro, Mechaye metim b'mamaro, Ha'el HaKadosh she'ein kamohu, Hameniach le'amo, Yom Shabbat kodsho, Kivam ratza le'aniach lahem, Kivam ratza le'aniach lahem, Lefanav na'avod begira v'fachad, V'nodei lishmo b'chol yom tamid, Me'on ha'berachot, El ha'odaot, Adon ha'shalom, Mekadesh ha'shabbat, Umvarech shvi'i, Umeniach b'kedusha, Le'amedush ne'oneg, Zecher le'maaseh, Le'maaseh v'reishit. Eloheinu ve'Elohei Avotenu, Retzei v'imnuchatenu, Kadeshenu b'mitzvotecha, V'tein chelkeinu b'toratecha, Sabeinu mituvecha, V'samchenu b'yeshuatecha, V'taher libeinu, V'avdecha be'emet, V'anchileinu Adonai Eloheinu Ve'ava uvratzon Shabbat Kodshecha Ve'yanuchu va'Yisrael Mekadeshei Shemecha Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. יתגדל ויקדש מרבה, ואלמד יברח חירותי וימליך מלכותי בחיי חון וביומי חון ובחיי כל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב ואמרו אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעלם לעלמי עלמיה יתברך, וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה, בריחו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה, תושבחתה ונחמתה, דאמירן בעלמה ואמרו Amen. Titkabbal Sotan Vaton, the Choisrael, Kodam Avon, the Vishmaya, Vimru, Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabba, Min Shmaya, Vechayim, Aleinu Ve'al Israel, Vimru, Amen. Ose Shalom Bimromav, Hu Ya'aseh Shalom Aleinu, Ve'al Kol Yisrael, Vimru, Amen. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. Ya'aseh Shalom, Ya'aseh Shalom, Shalom Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael. V'imru, Amen. Sorry. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam borei pri hagafen. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'ratza banu v'shabbat kodsho be'ahava uvratzon inchilanu zikaron lema'aseh v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh Zecher letziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'acharta Ve'otanu kidashta Mikol ha'amim Ve'shabbat kodshecha Be'ahava uvratzon Inchaltanu Baruch Ata Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat. So, Bill, I don't know if what you got was wine or juice. See, this is wine, so.
Oh, you're lucky. Man, thank you.
Sameachet libi. Okay. Page 56. Aleinu leshabeach la'adon hakol v'ateit gedula liotzer bereshit shelo asanu kigoyei ha'aratzot velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama shelo sam chelkeinu kahem v'gor aleinu kechol hamonam v'anachnu korim u'mishachavim vodim Lifnei melech malchei hamelachim HaKadosh Baruch Hu Shehu notei shamayim v'yosed aretz v'moshe karo b'shamayim Al ken nekavel l'charim Kakatuv b'toratecha Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed v'ne'emar v'haya Adonai lemelech al kol ha'aretz bayom hahu yihye Adonai echad u'shemo Ushmo echad, Ushmo echad. We turn now to Kaddish Yatom on page 58. We'll note a few yard sites falling today, Shabbat. Those of Joan Hart, Ralph Shapiro, and Linda Zaslow, as well as in the coming week, those of Benjamin Plout, Reuben Bard, Ruth Schwartz, Louis Marks, Evelyn Zucker, Arnold Opengart, Ada Letterman, Julius Sass, Mark Robert Swillinger, Rosabelle Friedlander, Esther Maines, Agnes Greenberg, Irene Satin, Ruth Seaman, Harvey Greenberg, Jacob Fisher, Joel Singerman, Neoma Budd, Steve Stulbarg, Sidney Gelfand, Eva Rack, and Isidore Weiser. That's 2 weeks out. I'm not sure why this is a 2-week list. So those are a number of additional yard sites. Looks like the last one in the coming week is actually that of Esther Maines. So printed an extra week there. We also recall at this time the following individuals whom we lost in our congregation, or to members of our congregation, who members of our congregation lost over the course of the last year. Among those, Evelyn Seltzer, Pat Keeler, Marge Ryder, Amy Perlman, Norm Epstein, Paul Bassa, Steve Blyer, Bernie Kiwi, Ron Kabikoff, Dan Geyer, Charles Albright, Bernie Slavitt, Elaine Beagleson, Frank Grossman, George Fisher, Selma Cohn, Sally Prager, Lori Gupp, Ben Koff, Alfred Horvitz, and Kevin Cole. If there's anyone else you're remembering tonight whom I didn't mention and you'd like to share a name, I'll invite you to do that at this time. If you're reciting Kaddish, please join with me, whether you're with us here in the synagogue, in the sanctuary, or if you're with us on the live stream. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shmei Rabbah. Ba'alama divra kirutei v'yamlich malchutei b'chayei chon u'v'yamei chon u'v'chayei d'chol beit Yisrael ba'agala u'v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yahei shmei Rabbah mevarach la'alam v'l'alamei alamaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnasei v'yithadar v'yit'aleh v'yithalal shmei t'kudsha b'richu la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechamata da'amiran ba'alama v'imru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Osei shalom b'mamav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael b'imru. Amen. Shabbat Shalom. Announcements. We've got very few. We'll be having services tomorrow morning. It is a slightly more robust service, ritually speaking, than always occurs. It's what we call a 3 Torah service because there are 3 Sifrei Torah from which we read. In addition to that piece of it, you'll note it is conspicuous on account of, the long Al Hanisim, the complete Hallel, and what I think is actually a pretty decent drash by yours truly. So come one, come all, be amazed. It'll be a good time and a lovely way to spend a Shabbat morning. In addition to all of that, a few things to note. This handsome fellow. Okay, yes. We have some upcoming events. Big one is Sunday evening. We'll be having our menorah lighting at the zoo at 5:30. Hope to see some of you there. I believe we will be regaled with a musical experience in part shared by Claire. I don't know. You look surprised now. This is what I was told. But okay. Okay. All right. So we'll bring our voices. We, as I noted, we have some anniversaries this month celebrating their anniversaries. We have Mark Braslovsky and Marina Devar, Don and Elaine Horties, Larry and Judy Knapp, Fred and Royal Duncan, and Herb and Ray Brass, all celebrating an anniversary this month. If any of you happen to be celebrating an anniversary in December and somehow it's not in our list, let us know because we need to correct our records. That seems like a no. That's good. Okay. And we'll note as well that if you have any simchas, any recent simchas that we have not caught wind of or not announced in the congregation, let us know about that as well because we have we had quite a robust number last month, and this month we didn't have anything new from anybody. So. I think that's it. That's all we got for now. So look forward to a nice conclusion of Hanukkah, and I'm excited about Rabbi Barna's presentation coming up in a few minutes here. We will close out our service with, let's see if we have it. Do we have Ma'oz Tzur somewhere in this piece? I think we do. The question is whether it's in other songs on page 70-something, 80-something, or if it is in the very back of the book under special, it must be, special pieces for Hanukkah. So let's, 429, there we go, 429. There we go. It's on the, it's in small print, goodness. All right. We'll just sing the first verse. Yeah, we've got we got both verses. There are more than 2 actually. There happen to be quite a number. But we'll do the first verse only. Ma'oz Tzur Yeshuati Lechana El Shabeach Tikon Beit Tefilati V'sham Toda Nizabeach Le'et Tachin Matbeach Mitzor Hanabeach Az Egmor B'shir Mizmor Chanukat HaMizbeach Az Egmor B'shir Mizmor Chanukat HaMizbeach. You know the good Jastro English as well to that one. And that is the same Jastro, by the way, if you've ever wondered. Marcus Jastro of the Jastro Dictionary also was responsible for the English verse. But I'm told he based it on the German, so there was already a German version.
Jastro and Gottheil, who did the English,
right.
On the German of Leopold Stein.
Stein, right, exactly, yeah. So they based it on an existing German version, yes. Very good. Well, Shabbat Shalom, Chag Chanukah Sameach, and it is now my pleasure to invite Rabbi Barnard forward for a presentation, which I feel we ominously set the stage for with our English reading of one of the Psalms about idols and such. But oh well.
We're not going to read all of those, it's a lot, it's 4 pages, but we'll look at them. Some of them, anyway. Good evening. I'm very happy to be here with you tonight, and I think that my topic was sometimes mentioned in shorthand as Hinduism, but it's really not. It's my encounter with Hinduism, because I want to start with a personal experience. Many of you know that after I retired from the congregation, I taught world religions for 3 years at Xavier. And as part of my preparation, I thought, well, I'll have to take the class to visit different houses of worship and religious places. I've been to churches, I've been to synagogues, I've been to mosques, but I had never been to a Hindu temple. So this was in the summer of 2014, just before I was starting. I went to the only Hindu temple I knew about at the time. There are several, I don't know how many, but at least 2. But the one I went to was rather large and imposing, and I went east and south on 275, and then around Milford, I turned west. So it was in Claremont County, but within 275, whatever that little area is called. And I went in, and I was shown into the main prayer hall, and there was no furniture. It was just a big empty hall, but in front was a dais, and there were about a dozen statues of gods, Brahma and Durga and Krishna, a lot of Krishna. There was Krishna as a baby, Krishna as a grown man. There was Hanuman, who looks like a monkey, Ganesh with the elephant head, all of them. And I said, and this is quietly to myself, am I allowed to be here? And the simple answer to that question is no. And you can look at sources, texts 1 and 2, if you would. Again, I'm not going to read them out loud. The first one is from Maimonides' commentary on the Mishnah. And by the way, Avodah Zarah, which will be mentioned in various places, literally means strange or alien worship, but it kind of means idolatry. And what the Rambam says is that you really shouldn't go into a city where there's idolatry, but in exile we can't help it, so you just have to be there, but you certainly shouldn't go into a house of idolatrous worship. Number 2 is I should say, lahavdil, is just by a contemporary Orthodox, probably very Orthodox rabbi, whose question is, can you visit a church or a mosque? And he says, certainly not a church, maybe a mosque, but he says, it goes without saying that the houses of worship of all other heathen religions, such as Hinduism, Buddhism, etc., are considered avodah zarah and are off limits at all times. Well, I thought to myself, if I'm going to teach at a university, I should be professional about this, so I will go through it, let me just bracket that. It's a problematic reaction, but that's a topic for another occasion. But that's why. So I looked around, and I talked to the priest, and as I was leaving, I said, when we have classes, I'm going to bring my students here, but if there's one thing that you would like them to know about Hinduism, what is it? And he said they should know that we are monotheists. We believe in one God. So I thought, okay. And we won. Now, when we had class, I arranged a day to bring the students, and we came to see what they call puja. Puja is their communal worship. Well, I guess you can have individual puja as well. It's like dog, so it's and the space that was empty was full of people sitting on the floor, Fortunately, they had folding chairs for those of us of a certain age. But people at various times made offerings to the statues. Fruit and things made of grain and so on. And, they brought them up and put them in front of the statues and they said little prayers. And then afterwards, everybody was invited to stay for lunch, which is prasada. Prasada is food which was offered to a god and then people can eat. And at this point, my other side kicked in. I said to myself, this is tikrovat akum. It's something which has been offered to an idol. So I explained to the students, we're invited to lunch, you can stay if you want to, and I left. So what I want to talk about is how I have been processing all of this stuff. I try to understand other religions sympathetically and to avoid negative prejudice. This is easiest, honestly, if you look at it theologically, it's easiest with Islam. Theologically, of all the world religions, I think Islam is the one that's closest to Judaism. No idols, no images, one God. Scripture, which draws a lot on Jewish sources, although Orthodox Muslims don't like to say that, but it draws a lot on Jewish sources, and so on. Christianity is passable. People, we have issues with the Trinity, and really the incarnation is a bigger problem, I think. But the reality is, we have attributes of God, the attribute of mercy, the attribute of justice. In Kabbalah, there are the sphirot. I should have put that on the handout, except it takes up a lot of me. There's this diagram with the different circles arranged in this way, and this is divine emanations. This divine substance comes down from God to the world through these vessels or sphirot. It's not the same as the Trinity. It's not three distinct persons. I don't think that Hod, one of the spirit, has its own independent. It doesn't have its own independent personality, but it's a way of expressing multiplicity in unity and so on. As far as incarnations, we have hints of it. Let me see if. Let me find some examples of that here. I know I have them. Okay, look at number 14. This is on page 3. This is one of the most theologically shocking passages in the Talmud. There are things which are more shocking in other ways, but here's it. Rabbi Ishmael ben Elisha says, I once entered into the innermost part of the temple to offer incense. He was the Kohen Gadol, the high priest. And I saw the Lord of hosts seated upon a high and exalted throne. He said to me, Ishmael, my son, bless me. And he nodded to me with his head. Wow. You say, we believe God has no image or anything. What is this? Number 15 is long. I did abbreviate it somewhat, but I couldn't cut it down enough to make sense and also be compact. So I'll just summarize it. It's a story about Rabbi Avraham Baruchim, who was a student of Rabbi Yitzhak Luria in the 16th century. And the Ari, Rabbi Yitzhak Luria, said he heard a heavenly voice saying that Rabbi Avraham was going to die, but he should go to Yerushalayim, and he should fast and pray and go to Yerushalayim and go to the Western Wall, and he should see a vision of the Shekhinah, of God's presence. So Rabbi Avraham did all of that, and when he reached the Wailing Wall, as we used to call it, Rabbi Avraham had a vision there. Out of the wall came an old woman dressed in black, deep in mourning. And when he looked into her eyes, he became possessed of a grief as deep as the ocean, far greater than he had ever known. It was the grief of a mother who has lost a child, the grief of Hannah after losing her 7 sons. This is not Hannah in the Tanakh. This is Hannah in the second Maccabees, I think. That's a reference to Hanukkah after all. The grief of the Shekhinah, of God's presence, over the suffering of her children, the children of Israel, scattered to every corner of the earth. And he fainted. When he woke up, he had another vision of the Shekhinah dressed in her woven out of light and so on. And the message was he was going to live. He wasn't going to die then. But he saw God's presence by the Western Wall. We can't be so hoity-toity about non-representationalism, not representing God. And as far as the incarnation Christianity, about the problems with Christianity, there are workarounds within Judaism, which we'll see in a little while. Buddhism is sort of funny. Classically, Buddhism is atheistic. The Buddhist speaker who came to my class said, and she obviously enjoyed saying it, said the Buddha was just a guy. In fact, if you look at all of Buddhism, I think it's not as congenial to Judaism as a lot of people, especially Jew-boos, think. But it avoids some obvious problems. And Buddhism light, so to speak, probably works fairly well with Judaism. Anyway, I have the hardest time, of all these major world religions, I have the hardest time with Hinduism. Going back to my experience walking into the prayer room of the Hindu temple. Look at source number 7. This is on page 2. This is Maimonides again. It's after Maimonides. It's not his actual words. But it's 2 of his principles of Jewish belief. And he said, the Creator, blessed his name, is a unity, and there is no union in any way like him. He alone is our God, etc. The Creator is not a body, is not affected by physical matter, and nothing whatsoever can compare to him or be compared to him. And that's drawing a pretty hard line. And at least, if you take this is the standard, Hinduism is on the other side of the line. But I have wanted to see if we can move beyond that totally negative view. And in doing so, I was inspired by these 2 books and authors. The first author is Alan Brill, Rabbi Dr. Alan Brill, whose book, the book is called Rabbi on the Ganges. Alan Brill was trained as an Orthodox rabbi in the United States in Yeshiva University. He got a doctorate in religious studies at Fordham University, which is a Catholic university. And he's now a professor of, I don't know what they call it, but religious stuff, religious studies, world religions or something, at Seton Hall University, which is also a Catholic university. A few years ago, he had a sabbatical and spent it at Varanasi on the Ganges. And this book is, the subtitle is A Jewish-Hindu Encounter. It's about his encounter with Hinduism, drawing on his experiences in Varanasi. The second book is called Same God, Other God by Alon Goshen Gottstein. Alon Goshen Gottstein is the son of Moshe Goshen Gottstein, who is a German-born Israeli scholar of Hebrew language. But Alon is a scholar of religions. He has some kind of rabbinic training, but I've never been able to find exactly where. I assume it's fairly traditional, and he has a doctorate from some universities in religions. And he runs what's called the Elijah Institute, which is for interreligious studies and encounters and so on. So passing, you know, you're looking inside and just see words, lots of words. But you can look anyway. So what I want to talk about is how there's some movement from, you know, take from the two extremes. On the one hand, you have Maimonides' two principles of Jewish belief, and the site of the Hindu temple with all the idols in it. I'm going to see if we can move past those views. And I'll actually have more to say on the Jewish side than the Hindu side, but there'll be something from both. First of all, we can find in Judaism a more nuanced view of unity. There's a look at source number 10. This is from the Mechilta. It's an early midrash on the book of Exodus. A very respectable source. It's on the beginning of the Ten Commandments, the beginning of the Decalogue. I am the Lord your God who took you out of the land of Egypt. Why does it say, I am the Lord your God? Because God appeared at the Red Sea as a hero waging war. I say the Lord is a man of war. God appeared at Mount Sinai as an elder full of mercy. And so on. So, you know, God appears in different places in different ways. But there's really only one God. So the unity here admits at least of different kinds of appearances. Second is, I said that there are workarounds within Jewish tradition for some of the problems of idolatry, and they arose out of the fact that the classical position, we're not supposed to have we're not supposed to have dealings with idolaters, and especially not to do business with them close to their holidays. So a Jewish shop owner is supposed to close his store on December 22nd. This was a problem. So, which number is it? Number 4. It's on the first page. This is from Tosfot. These are notes on the Talmud from northern France in, I guess, 12th century. And he said, today everybody swears by their holy objects. Like, you know, by the true cross or whatever people say, which are not gods. Even though they mention God and are thinking of something else, meaning Jesus, that is not idolatry because they are thinking of the creator of heaven and earth. And even though they combine that mention with something else, Noachides, that is, moral, civilized non-Jews, are not forbidden to do that. So, you know, we can't do that. I mean, if we stub our toes and mention the name of Jesus, I mean, it doesn't have religious significance, but we're not supposed to do stuff like that. But non-Jews can do it. So this was, it was an opportunistic but useful way of mitigating the harshness of the Talmudic anti-idolatry laws, anti-fraternization laws. Okay, we okay so far? Anybody have any comments or questions? I'm going to go on in the same vein for a while. All right. I think more interesting than the position of Tosfot is that of Rabbi Menachem HaMeiri, who lived in the late 13th, early 14th century. And this is number 5. And he's talking about, again, dealings with different kinds of non-Jews. He said it's forbidden to steal even from idolaters who are not constrained by religious morality. So these barbarians, but we still can't steal from them. However, people who are constrained by religious morality, that's my translation of his phrase, umot hagdurot b'darchei hadat, people who are constrained by religious morality and who believe in God in some way, even though their belief is far from ours, are to be treated like Jews with regard to civil law. This is not an opportunistic view so that Jews can survive economically in Christian Europe. It's a recognition that there's some level of commonality among at least some religions. And Meiri was thinking probably of Christianity and probably secondarily of Islam.
It's strange that you didn't think of atheists.
Well, remember he talked about umot, nations bounded by religious morality. His idea is that everybody belongs to some kind of a community. You're either a Christian, in his time, you're either a Christian, a Jew, or a Muslim. Now, within each of those communities, I'm sure in the 13th century as today, there were people who had different individual opinions, but there was no organized group of atheists in 13th century Provence. Okay. The third way of moving away from the strict Maimonidean position is number 18, which actually historically takes us back to the Talmud, although there's also a medieval echo of it in Nachmanides. Rabbi Chia bar Abba said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, the Gentiles outside the land of Israel are not idolaters. They only continue the customs of their ancestors. What does that say to you? I have, it's not obvious what it means. I have a theory, and I'm going to tell it to you, but first, anybody have any thoughts about that? Yes, Rabbi.
Well, I'm struck by knowing the resonance of the phrase, Maseh Avoteim Yideihem. It's a phrase that rather than our legal codes use, for example, with respect to Karaites.
With regard to what?
With respect to the Karaites, for example.
Okay.
As a way of dealing with certain communities that we might have an issue with the initial heresy or the initial split when it came along. In good Maimonidean fashion, we think, everybody ought to have the same intellectual understanding of God, and if only they did, they'd all be on track with us. But someone made a mistake somewhere along the lines, and you can't fault the people today for the mistake that someone made centuries and centuries ago. In a way, it's very liberal. It's very generous.
Yeah, and it puts religious belief into a historical context. It takes it out of the realm of abstract theology and puts it into a historical context. Very similar to what I was going to say, which is it recognizes to some extent cultural relativity. Now, there's the thing about in the land of Israel, my view is that in the Talmud they believe that the special holiness of the land of Israel trumped cultural latitudinarianism, but again, that was a special case. I mentioned Nachmanides. His view is similar. He sees the problem with idolatry. He sees Nachmanides, Rabbi Moshe ben Nachman, who lived mostly in Spain, although he died in Eretz Israel. He's in the end of the 13th century. That the problem with idolatry is not the substance of the theology, but with being disloyal to God. And so for Jews, this is very bad. But non-Jews, none of this stuff would count as pluralism in the late 20th, early 21st century sense. Where he said, non-Jews don't have a special covenant with God, so they believe some of the stuff is right, some of the stuff is wrong, but it's not such a big deal. In any case, all of this is another way of pushing the ball, to take a weird manner, but pushing the ball forward a little bit. Okay. Now, let's talk about some movement on the Hindu side. And here let's look at this. First, I'll talk about the issue of the number of gods. And let's look at number 11. This is the bottom of page 2, and it goes over onto page 3. This is from one of the Upanishads, okay, the standing on one toe. The foundational works of Hinduism are the Vedas, which there are basically 4 of them. They're 2nd millennium BCE, so it's contemporaneous with the earliest part of the Tanakh. Next level are the Upanishads, which is like, I guess, 1st millennium BCE, maybe later. They're not commentaries on the Vedas, it's sort of reflections on the Vedas. I see them as being something like the Torah Sheba'al Peh, because in fact Upanishad means like sitting together and talking or something like that. So the idea is that here, scholars and disciples or different scholars, talking, reflecting on issues which come out of the study of the Vedas, and they said this. But the thing about the Upanishads is that they represent a major shift in the emphasis in Hinduism away from ritual and sacrifice, which the Vedas are really about sacrifice, to reflection and meditation and self-awareness and things like that. Okay, so here's part of one talking about how many gods there are. So we start one of the characters, who is this, Yajnavalkya, said there are 303 or maybe 3,003. But they said, well, how many are there really? So 33. How many? 6. How many are there really? 3. Maybe 2. And then 1.5. And then finally, it goes back to 1. And then the interlocutor says, then who are those 3 and 300 and 3 and 3,000? So they only the powers of gods. To me, this deconstructs the whole question of the number of gods. I see it almost as humorous. How many gods are there? Well, how many would you like there to be? or more seriously, it depends on what you're talking about. It depends on the context and the meaning of the question and so on. So I don't think that the Hindus generally didn't worry about that question. Muslims, and to an even greater extent Christians, when they encountered Hindu, really worried about how many gods the Hindus believed in. But for the Hindu, it wasn't an issue because they were not counting in that way. Here's number 12 rather, is a little quotation from Brill, which picks up on the thing talking about the powers of gods. The Sanskrit word, which is often used, is deva, from which we get eventually the word divine. Sanskrit is an Indo-European language. And this person, Al-Biruni, who renders the Sanskrit gods deva with the Arabic term for angels, malaika, like malachim in Hebrew. Or spiritual beings, ruhaniyot in Hebrew. It's a theological shift aiding their acceptance. Christian works of the colonial and modern periods translate the word deva as gods, so as to imply polytheism. So again, we don't make statues of angels or things. However, if you say there's one real divine being and all these others are sort of subordinate, that's not as bad or as offensive as saying there are all these different gods. Again, it's pushing a little bit closer. I mentioned, and I gave very sympathetic mention to the position of Menachem HaMeiri, who talked about nations bounded or restricted by religious morality. Let's look at numbers 8 and 9. So number 8, there are 5 external disciplines: not harming, truthfulness, not stealing, chastity, which doesn't mean celibacy, it just means proper sexual behavior. Okay. And the last one is aparigraha, which is not being covetous, not being acquisitive. Right. But that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? And then look at number 9, which is from the Mahabharata. This is one of the big Hindu epics, which is, I guess, 1st millennium CE. The sum of duty is do not do to others what would cause pain if done to you. And you can't do much better than that. So I would say, Hindus are certainly a nation bounded by religious morality. And finally, there's one that I couldn't find a written source. It's somewhere in my course, my 3 years of course notes, but I couldn't find it. An American Hindu student was talking about her religious experience. And she was explaining, how the statues of the gods, what they meant to her. And she said, we can't really grasp God. We can't apprehend God or anything. But when we see the statues, that gives us an inkling of what God might be like. It's like seeing the tip of his fingernail. So certainly there's a recognition, again, that the statues are not gods. And even the characters that the statues are statues, Krishna and Lakshmi and so on, they're manifestations of Brahman. Okay, there are 3 words in Hebrew in 3 Hindu words that are similar: is Brahmin, which is the highest caste, the Hindu priest; Brahma, who is one of the gods; and Brahman, which is like the ultimate divine reality principle. And certainly all these other things are manifestations of Brahman. Okay. I have 2 sort of summary remarks and then a summary and then a conclusion. The 2 summary remarks are that I've talked about how God appears in various ways as recognized in Judaism to show that pure Maimonideanism is not really characteristic of the whole of Judaism. There's a difference, though, that in Judaism, God pretty much manages his own appearances. There are things that we can do that, say, will make it more like studying Torah and so on, but ultimately, God decides whether or not he's going to appear. In Hinduism, people bring on the appearance of the divine. They have a much larger role in bringing on the appearance of the divine. It's not just having a statue, but more to you. These statues, because they have to be prepared and they have to be taken care of. That before festivals, the statues are washed, and you bring them offerings, and you do all this stuff. It's sort of preparing the statue to be a vehicle for a divine manifestation. In fact, some of the Hindu statues are destroyed at the end of a festival to show that this is not the real thing. This is just a temporary manifestation of it. Hinduism and Judaism have more in common than one might think. Again, in Brill, that's a theme of Brill's book, that he shows many, many parallels. I mean, he always says, well, it's not exactly the same, but there are many, many parallels. For example, we have a schedule of daily rituals, a schedule of life cycle rituals. The Vedas function very much like the Torah. Something which is, something like this. In both religions, there is a background of sacrifice. Like our daily prayers are based on the schedule of sacrifices in the temple. The Hindus still have kind of sacrifices, and what they do in pujas is grain and fruit and stuff like that. There is a history of animal sacrifice in Hinduism. Today, it is very, very, very rare. It's certainly not mainstream. I'm sure the people in Claremont County don't do it. But again, it's a touch point between Judaism and Hinduism. There's something about, do I have it? Okay, I had there was another source, but I can't find it here. Even though Maimonides has sort of been the bad cop throughout this presentation, in one place in the Guide of the Perplexed, he talks about the contemplative ideal of reaching for God. And by this contemplation for him is philosophical contemplation, not mystical meditation. He said, you can become close to God. And Brill said, that sounds very Hindu. Also, in something which is sort of unpleasant, but it's there, is both have hierarchical structures. In Hinduism, there's the famous or notorious caste system, which, by the way, is not as rigid as it seems to us. The idea of the rigid 4+1 castes was really invented by the British. They saw they saw these people in India doing various things, and they tried to make a system out of it. But on the other hand, there certainly is hierarchical structure of Hinduism, and we have it too. In Judaism, it's vestigial. It's Kohanim, Levim, and Yisraelim, which really are just sort of honorary statuses. But in ancient times, if you look at source number 20, there were actually 10 castes, and it had to do with who could marry whom and so on. So it's very complicated. Also, one other thing which is important is that both Judaism and Hinduism have ethnic and geographical rooting. Unlike Buddhism, unlike Christianity, unlike Islam, all these religions had origins in particular places, but they really aimed at being international, transnational, to go beyond ethnic and other boundaries. Whereas Judaism and Hinduism, while today they're found all over the world, still have this particular rootedness, except there's no covenant. There's no such thing as a covenant in Hinduism. It's kind of a way of life. Hinduism is not something that Hindus like. They call it Sanatana Dharma, the eternal way. And there you are. So, here's my bottom. Just as a last thought before concluding, there's an expression in Judaism called being matahe hasheretz b'kufnun ta'amim. I think of the idols in the Hindu temple, and I went, is all of this argument that Brill wrote a book, and to a great extent Goshen Gottstein wrote these books about, and I spent a lot of time developing this presentation, is this trying to take something which is obviously wrong and say, no, it's really all right? My bottom line, though, is that I am with Brill, with Goshen Gottstein, and others in trying to understand other religions sympathetically, and I hope you find that worthwhile. Anybody have any thoughts? Yeah, Claire.
Yeah, Matt and I visited the Hindu temple a few years ago. There was a dance presentation, like people wanted to see Indian dance. So we had all the different age groups performing, and of course we saw the large space with the statue of gold and flowers, and this was great. On the caste system, I heard a thing on the radio I don't know which college this was at, but the students, a lot of Indian students had come over, and they thought they had left the caste system. The lower caste students were sort of shunned by the upper caste students. They had to like teach them to get along. This is America, they don't have a caste system. And the other thing is, I feel like Hinduism probably isn't monolithic any more than Protestantism.
Oh,
is.
yeah.
Probably people who have an intellectual idea of one God and these are just manifestations, aspects, and other people who sincerely believe that the idol in their kitchen that they offer food out to every morning is something that they need to do to make the crops grow and the rain fall.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Hinduism is so diverse that, and some people have claimed, sort of with a dig, there's no such thing as Hinduism. Again, the thing is, the British invented it. they saw Indians doing all kinds of people in India, rather, doing all kinds of different things, and so they said, well, what they're doing is a religion called Hinduism, which is not exactly true, but it's certainly very diverse. There was something, I don't know, whatever I was going to read to. Yeah, Jeff?
Almost 30 years ago, I was adult ed chair. And the mosque on Tylersville Road had recently opened. We had a synagogue trip to go for the mosque.
Yeah.
And I knew of the Hindu temple in Claremont County, and I suggested a tour of the Hindu temple. And you said no. And you felt not comfortable with it being Hinduism was not a monotheistic religion.
Yeah.
You know? And so my question to you is now, when you went to the Hindu temple, what did it feel like?
Well, again, the first time I went, I went, ah! But, I got used to it. Obviously, I've evolved. I don't remember that conversation from 30 years ago, but I can imagine it. I think the change in my attitude must have started before 2014, but the only events I can identify are my work in learning about to teach it and reading the work of people like Brill. So, yeah, that's Rabbi.
I'm just thinking about that too. For my speaking, if someone asked me today about visiting a site that I thought might be religiously inappropriate as a synagogue activity, I would have a different answer to that question than either as a private citizen or from a standpoint of intellectual curiosity. I think the idea that learning about other faiths can be a Jewish devotional act is a rather new idea, in some places not at all entrenched. And that, I think, to say that that's something that you've seen an evolution in your own life, or your own Levitic consciousness, is, I think, it's an interesting point to consider.
Yeah, in fact, when I taught at Xavier, I came on very much as if this is the academic study of religion. And I try to stick to that line very much. The other questionable thing I did was I said God's name. Not a lot. I explained the whole business about it, and he said, okay, but I have to tell you what it is. So I said it. I wrote it with gaps on the blackboard, and then I said, okay, now I'm not going to do it anymore. I'm going to use circumstances. But I went that far. However, I also felt that even though it was Theology 342, I felt that increasing understanding among people of different kinds is a spiritual act. So, yeah. Any other thoughts or things? No? Okay. Shabbat Shalom. Happy Hanukkah.
Thank you.
You're the boss. You're the